What's going on today? Hey, I am charged up. I'm Bernie Miklasz, and this is the Bernie Show presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Why am I so geeked up? Well, you probably see this color of my cap here today. It kind of looks like the St. Louis Blues colors, does it not? Yeah, I think so. And I am really, really geeked up about this series. First round series, Blues versus Winnipeg Jets. Round one of the Stanley Cup Playoffs, a best-of-7 series that could just turn a lot of things upside down, and I'm really looking forward to it. The Blues are re-entering the postseason after, I don't have to tell you all, but after a 2-year exile, and there's nothing like playoff hockey. Even when the Blues were having all those years where they had all those great teams and they were coming up empty every spring, and yeah, it was disheartening. It was disillusioning. It just, at times it was disgusting. But you always wondered, "Ah, gosh, it's got to happen one of these times, right? It's got to happen one of these times." And then they would kind of break your heart all over again. You still love the team, and they had some great players and some great coaches and some great teams. See, but that's part of being a fan. That's part of having something near and dear to you. It's part of having a team in your community that is embedded as a big part of your community. There's a lot at stake for them. A lot at stake for that team because they want to win. They want to put their mark on history of the franchise or St. Louis sports. And there's a lot at stake for fans who just invest so much emotion and time and money and caring and everything else you can name. We invest in a franchise because it's so important to us and it's such a traditional thing. It's in effect part of our families for a long period of time. So the time of year, first of all, it's great to have your team back in it. Just great. And I missed it when they weren't there the last couple of years. But you also know that you go into it and you got a lot on the line, including your own emotions and whether you're going to be happy whenever it is when the postseason starts, right? So I'm thrilled to see the Blues take this stage again at this time of the year. As I mentioned, just really missed it, and I missed the drama and the suspense and the severe emotional churn that's part of it. Stomach flipping all the time, right? Welcome back, Blues, and go beat Winnipeg. It will not be easy, but it can be done. Winnipeg, I want to get into this a little bit because of the psychology of this series fascinates me. And I like it from the Blues standpoint. Winnipeg has the highest chance to win the Stanley Cup of any team in the playoffs, the 16 teams, according to multiple statistical projection models that I've been looking at the last couple of days. Neil Payne, who's an outstanding hockey analyst and actually sports analyst, he invented the thing called the ELO system, and his system gives the Jets a 21% chance of winning it all. The second most favorable projection to win the Stanley Cup is Tampa Bay with 11% probability, followed by Vegas at 10%, Toronto and Colorado at 9%, Carolina and LA Kings at 7%, Washington and Dallas at 6%. And if you're wondering, Neil Payne's system gives the Blues a 2% chance of winning it all. And you know what? I'll take that because it doesn't matter. All that matters now, I'm just giving you an idea of how all these teams are perceived as far as their shot at winning everything. It doesn't matter, though, and I'll take that. You know why I'll take the 2% shot of winning it all? Some people might be, like offended by that. I'm not. You know why? Because the Blues weren't supposed to be in the Stanley Cup tournament. They weren't supposed to be here. They were written off. And, even some of the great fans of this team, just almost came to the point, in late January or so that it wasn't going to happen. The team was good and it was going to improve under Jim Montgomery, but it probably wasn't going to happen. I'm going to say you totally gave up, but you just kind of resigned to what appears to be the reality. And then we all know what happened. The Blues went 24-3. They won 20 They went 24-3. I don't know why I'm like stumbling over that. I apologize. It's Friday afternoon. It's late. My brain's very limited if you haven't noticed. But anyway, over their final 27 regular season games, 20 wins, 4 losses, 3 1-point games. And here's something that I question, with that in mind, the Blues went on this great run. There's something that I question about all of these analyses and projections is they're based on a full season of regular season hockey. But from the St. Louis viewpoint, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I understand why they're doing it. You look at the whole body of work, I get that. But the Blues had 2 seasons. They had 2 seasons in one. They had before Jim Montgomery as coach and after Jim Montgomery as coach. Before Monty became the coach, just a reminder, the Blues had the 26th best record in the league. And as I mentioned the other day, they in those first 22 games, they had scored only 41.7% of the goals at 5-on-5. They were just getting run out of the place at 5-on-5. They were barely competitive. But after Monty became the coach, the Blues had the NHL's second best record in terms of, let me go back and do this again. After he became the coach on November the 25th, the Blues were the second best team in the league at 5-on-5 if you go by the goal share. It was 59% and change. I mean, it was a dramatic shift. It was a dramatic change. And see, this is the Blues team, not the before Montgomery team. They're not going in the playoffs. This Blues team is the Montgomery team that is going into the playoffs, and all the good things that happened since Montgomery took over, they will take that into the playoffs to face Winnipeg. The Jets are not facing the St. Louis Blues per se. They're facing the Jim Montgomery version of the St. Louis Blues. They're not facing the Drew Bannister Blues. And as we all know very well by now, that's a pretty significant difference. At the time, I want to go back in this. I mentioned the other day, but I want to replay this again. Plus, there's been an update on some of the numbers. And I'm not getting too bogged down on this as far as numbers. But at the time Monty took over, the Blues had 60 games left on their regular season schedule. And at that point, Winnipeg also had 60 games remaining on the schedule. And from that point on, where they each had 60 games left, there wasn't much to separate the Blues and the Jets over the final 60 contest. Both teams had very good records over the final 60. Winnipeg had a game in hand late in the season. So the Blue, until the Winnipeg, I think, played their final game, they were only like 3 points better than the Blues since November the 25th, but it ended the regular season. They were 5 points better. It's still a pretty small margin. But Winnipeg was slightly better than the Blues over the final 60 games. But the thing that jumps out at me too is that over that time, the Blues and Jets, they literally were tied for the NHL's highest, best goal share at 5-on-5 over the final 60 games. They were the 2 strongest teams 5-on-5, and their numbers were virtually identical. I like this. I like this a lot because that's Winnipeg's game, and the Blues are just as good at it. In some ways, the Blues were even better over the final 60. They averaged more goals scored per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 than Winnipeg. The Blues also outscored Winnipeg in terms of goals per 60 minutes at all strengths. The Blues were very strong at limiting goals, but I have to say, you give Winnipeg the respect. Winnipeg was the number 1 team in the league at preventing goals during the entire NHL regular season. The Jets were the only team in the league to allow fewer than 200 goals. And they really, really limit goals at 5-on-5. And that's going to be a big challenge for the Blues, even though structurally and in a fundamental, foundational way, the Blues are a very strong 5-on-5 team. But they're going up against the team that was the best in the league this year, the Jets, at allowing goals at 5-on-5 and some other strengths. So, and the interesting thing about the Jets, here's what I want to get into something. This is where I'm going to talk about the psychology of the series or how the perceptions of the series or whatever. So the analysts who do solid work, and they're based on sound principles. The analysts have a much different assessment of Winnipeg's chances of winning the Stanley Cup. A big difference, for example, than what the odds are at DraftKings, right? The analysts see the Jets as the team to beat, the 16 teams that are in the playoffs. The analysts say, well, this is the team with the best chance. We've run all of our, run all of our projections, and we have our long-term models, and we're comfortable with those models. And if they don't, they're not going to predict the winner every time, but we're confident that going in, the Winnipeg Jets have the best shot. They're the team to beat, so to speak. Now, if you go to DraftKings, for example, to check this, DraftKings, their odds have seven teams with greater odds than Winnipeg to win it all. And I was looking at my screen because I had to make sure that note was accurate. See, there is a real discrepancy in how the Jets are viewed by analysts and such. And the fact is that the betting markets are highly skeptical of Winnipeg. And why is that? I can't wait to explain it because I've been putting this together today, and I can't wait to share the information with you. But I want to take a little time, actually, since I just mentioned DraftKings, a good time to mention DraftKings again. And I really appreciate it if you listen to the message about our sponsor. We're very grateful for them here on the Bernie Show. And if you think you know Major League Baseball or the NHL, the NBA, PGA Tour, whatever the heck else is going on, right? It's time to have some fun. It's time to win, and it's time to get going. Just focus on the player stats. Then you decide which players to go with to pull in big cash prizes with DraftKings Pick 6. It's so much fun to play. And when it comes to huge payouts, in comparison to the competition, DraftKings is, since it's hockey playoff time, DraftKings compared to the competition, it's a breakaway goal, it's a hat trick, or it's a goaltender that will make all of the big saves. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. Playing's a lot of fun. You make your picks, and you have more fun. You have a blast as you track your picks, see how they're doing, and you're shot to win big cash prizes. It's as simple as that. I signed up. It was so easy to get started. You download the DraftKings app. Gosh, it takes no time at all to do that. You open an account. That's very simple and quick. Then you choose your sport, you pick your players, and you go for it. You can turn your knowledge of baseball, NHL, NBA, any other sport into cash. You convert that knowledge into cash, and you can get started today, now, as a matter of fact. New players at DraftKings get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly with just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers. Just play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All righty then. Before I talked about DraftKings, I mentioned there's in the betting markets, there is an enormous amount of skepticism over the Jets' chances of winning the Stanley Cup. I like this because the Blues are playing them right away, right? So if the betting markets are correct, they believe that the Jets are very vulnerable. Once again, as a Blues fan, I kind of like that. I like when a team can go in as the straight up underdog. The expectations are low. The other team had the most successful regular season in the league this year. Their fans are going nuts up there, and they're great fans in Winnipeg. They really are. I like a Blues team going into this situation because they got nothing to lose. As I said earlier, they weren't supposed to even be here, right? So let's start with this when we try to run through the reasons why so skeptical the betting markets about the Jets. Let's talk about it. Well, number one, the Jets have had a bitterly disappointing history in postseason competition. And it's a kind of thing that could make them vulnerable and really wobbly if the Blues can come right at them and take the lead. And what I mean by taking the lead, I'm talking about in game one tomorrow, Saturday. I'm talking about taking the lead in game one, and I'm talking about taking the lead in the series. Since reaching the Western Conference Final in 2018 and losing to Vegas, and Winnipeg was favored to win that series, and they lost it. Winnipeg has captured only one playoff round since then. It was an upset over Edmonton in 2021. Other than that lone triumph, the Jets have lost 4 series since starting it with that situation after they lost to Vegas in the conference final in 2018. Since then, the Jets have lost 4 additional series, including 3 against opponents that had lesser regular season records than the Jets. And so they lost to the underdog team, in other words, 4 times, 3 of the 4 times. And those 4, here's the other thing, those 4 postseason defeats in those rounds, right? They weren't even competitive. They were like no contests. Winnipeg, the last 4 postseason rounds they've lost, they only won 4 games and they lost 16. So we're not talking about like these series that go the full 7 games and it's down to like one play to deciding it all. These fellas got destroyed. They went out in the first round in 2023, and then they went out in the first round again in 2024. The betting markets don't trust them. And with this information, you can understand why. And this is important to know too. It's not because the Jets roster has changed in a dramatic transition, like where you don't recognize the team that's been losing those games. Because actually the Jets have gone down hard with the same core nucleus of players, including, in effect, their 5 best players based on value, like their goaltender, Connor Hellebuyck, the forwards, Connor, Mark Shifley, Miklasz, defenseman Josh Morrissey. I'm bad at pronouncing names, but you know who I'm talking about. All of these guys and others have been Jets since the start of the 2016-17 season. So there is some doubt here about this core group's capability of going deep in the postseason. Another reason for the skepticism in the betting markets, it's a view, whether it's correct or not, but there is a strong view that the Jets are overly dependent on their elite goaltender, Hellebuyck. Now, about him, he's a great goaltender, but if we remove his postseason record from the evaluation, and we'll get to that here in a moment, if you just forget about some of the playoff problems he's had, you can make the case that Hellebuyck is the NHL's top goaltender. I don't think many people would dispute that. We're talking regular season hockey. And that should make him extremely valuable, right? Because goaltending is so critically important in the postseason in the NHL. But that's the thing. The postseason also has a lot of randomness. The outcomes, you think you know what's going to happen, but you don't. A lot of randomness just kind of hits good teams. That randomness can just bounce really good or great teams out of the tournament right away. And then a team like that's overlooked, like the 2019 Blues, can just go in there and steal the thunder and go all the way to the Stanley Cup. These lightning strikes can turn everything around. So as the analyst Neil Payne pointed out, and listen to these 2 numbers, Hellebuyck's save percentage over the previous 2 postseasons. Again, they got booted in the first round of 23 and the first round again in 24. His save percentage in those 2 postseasons, compared to where he was in the regular season, it fell from 17% better than league average during the regular season to 30% worse than the league average during the playoffs. I mean, the Jets got eliminated in 5 games in the first round of each of the last 2 postseasons. And again, I apologize for repeating that, but they got eliminated by 5 games both times. Hellebuyck had an .886 save percentage against Vegas in 2023 and an .864 save percentage, even worse, last year against Colorado. And again, their record in those 2 series that eliminated them, well, what is it? 1-4 times 1-4, 2-8, lost 8 of the 10 games. Starting with the 2019 postseason and a first round ejection by the underdog Blues, Hellebuyck's got a 9-19 record as the playoff starter, beginning with the Blues upset over the Jets back in 2019. He's lost 19 out of 28 starts since then, starting with that, right? That's kind of glaring, would you say? I think so. Given the fragile postseason performances of not just the Jets, but their goaltender since the start of 2019, and really since that 2018 loss in the conference final, can the Blues strike for early leads? Can they get on the board, come out in game 1, take a 2-0 lead, a couple early goals? Can they steal a game? Or, my gosh, the fantasy of all fantasies, at least at first, can they steal 2 games at Winnipeg? Can they make the Jets crack? Can the Blues make Hellebuyck crack? That's what I'm looking forward to finding out. Listen, let's give him the respect in this regard. He's got a lot to prove in the postseason. I just told you why. He was absolutely phenomenal at home this season, and that's where the first 2 games are. And if it goes 7 games, that's where the game 7 would be. At home this season, he racked up a 27-3-3 record, a .938 save percentage, a 1.63 goals against average, and 6 shutouts. Not bad, right? However, that's one version of Hellebuyck. The other one is the playoff or the championship or the big showdown version of the same goaltender. He was badly outplayed by Blues rookie goaltender. So it sounds so funny to say that now. He was badly outplayed by Blues rookie goaltender Jordan Binnington in that first playoff round in 2019. And Binnington got him again, as you know, pretty recently in the Four Nations Faceoff final when he led Binnington led the Team Canada to a victory over the shaky Hellebuyck and Team USA. And that was before, as you remember, Canadian hockey fans and media were really down on Binnington, saying he should have been replaced in goal. But there was some money on the line, there was some prestige on the line. And just like 2019, when their teams met in the Four Nations face-off final, Binnington was ready to lead his team to victory, and Hellebuyck, not so much. That could be a coincidence, or it could be a pattern that actually means something. I don't know. That's why they play the games. And now Hellebuyck and the Jets face a hungry Blues team that blitzed their way to a NHL best 24-3 record in the last 27 regular season games, as I pointed out, and that included a 12-game winning streak that was ended by Winnipeg. But I think the Blues were probably out of gas by that time. That's when you're going to set a franchise record. I think the intensity level is pretty high. But I'm not making an excuse for them. Winnipeg beat them. Winnipeg won the President's Trophy for the NHL's best record during the regular season, but I don't know if that means all that much. There's no President's Trophy curse, as some people have said. The numbers don't support it. But longtime Blues fans, and this guy here, I haven't forgotten the 1999-2000 Blues, coached by Joel Quenneville. The Blues won the President's Trophy with a 51-19-11 record, 114 points, and they were promptly booted in the first round by an unimposing San Jose team. There's some bad memories there, and there was those very strange series as well. So that was the time when all the pressure in the NHL universe was on the Blues. You had a 114-point season, and everyone's saying this is the year they win the Stanley Cup, and man, they didn't handle the pressure well, and they went belly up right away. Now, this brings us to this matchup. All of the pressure is on Winnipeg this time. They aren't carrying a curse into this series, but they are trying to make their recent postseason failures disappear. And seriously, as we have learned in St. Louis through the decades, lugging that extra burden of pressure around can really impact how a team plays. Because we all talk ourselves, any team that this applies to, you talk yourself into thinking, this is the year. Look how great that team was. And then it happens again. Boom, it's over. And so if the same group of players have been together for a while and they go back into that same type of situation, there's some psychological damage there that's not easy to be undone. Not easy to heal. And that's why I love the Blues' vantage point in this series. Winnipeg's got all that stuff in their heads. The Blues got nothing in their heads. They want to play. They got nothing to lose. Because, again, they weren't supposed to be here. They were supposed to be golfing somewhere because just about everyone thought, man, this is such a long shot. It's January flipped to February. It's kind of like, boy, the odds against them making the playoffs are pretty deep. It's probably not going to happen. So I don't think anybody really had a strong belief that it would happen. And if they tell you they did, I'm going to say maybe they're kind of fibbing a little bit, right? Number two, the Blues also come into this conflict with a younger team than the Jets. And if the experience matters, like the old-time hockey people insist, then St. Louis may be considered too immature to pull off the upset. But these young Blues, they don't have this psychological damage of belly flopping in the playoffs so many times when they were supposed to win. I'm referring to the Winnipeg Jets. The Blues come in here with their youngsters and a lot of their veterans, and they're just saying, man, this is house money. This is house money. The young kids are just like, hey, isn't this awesome? We're in the playoffs. Experience matters, but what if it's bad experience in the postseason? It's one thing if it's good experience and positive experience and championship winning experience, but what difference does experience make when the more experienced team also has many experiences of failing miserably in the Stanley Cup playoffs in recent years? So I don't know that if the experience thing matters, and if it does, it might matter in a way that most people would fail to understand. The experience factor may actually work against Winnipeg. Number three, I do worry about this. I cannot lie. And why would anyone lie? The Blues are without their dynamic young center, Dylan Holloway, sidelined by a lower body injury. What was that? April 3rd. Yeah, April 3rd against the Red Wings. Before that, he had really propelled the Blues. Well, a lot of guys were, but Holloway was so good during that stretch leading into the injury. He had 9 goals, 12 assists in his previous 12 games. He was just flying. His speed was great. His playmaking was great. And he gave the Blues such a great second line, right? So, yeah, that's a big loss. I don't know when realistically he'll return, but it's a big loss. The Blues have really good depth. I'm not saying they can't overcome it, but yeah, that one hurts. It really does. And at least there's a little relief right now because, we saw Robert Thomas, the number one center and just an emerging star in this league. He got banged up in the final regular season game when the Blues clinched the playoff spot. And he's been cleared to go for game 1 at Winnipeg. He's practiced Friday and everything was fine. But it's hockey, and that the intensity's cranked up, and it's a lot more physical. It's a lot of edgy play. That bodies are just flying into other bodies, and they're smacking each other and crashing into each other. And so I'm not aware of what Thomas's injury is, but what if the Jets really do a number? And I'm not talking about dirty play. I'm just talking about what if they're able to just smack him around over and over again? Is he going to remain healthy, or will his effectiveness be impacted by that? That's an unknown. Robert Thomas, very tough guy, though. He'll do whatever he has to take to cope with the pain, if there is a lot of pain. Now, the hockey analyst at The Athletic, and I'm mentioning them not to pick on them or to single them out, but it's just one that I saw. The analysts at The Athletic give the Blues a 31% chance of knocking off Winnipeg. Excuse me. I repeat, the Blues have nothing to lose because too many analysts are taking their entire season into account instead of zeroing in on what really matters, this team's transformation since Jim Montgomery became their leader back on November the 25th. Listen, this is the best team that Winnipeg has had in its NHL history in that market. Their history in that market spans two different franchises, two different eras, if you will. And there was a 15-year gap when they didn't have a team in Winnipeg. Listen, the Jets fan base is great. I love watching games there. I probably, as a Blues fan, won't enjoy watching them quite as much now. Well, unless, of course, the Blues are winning. But think about, again, I'm going back to the emotions and the psychology in the series. It isn't just so much as expected of the Jets as a hockey team. When you're the best regular season team, much is expected of you no matter where your home base is. But this outstanding, passionate Winnipeg fan base is so pumped up. They really believe, just as we have said in the past in St. Louis, really believe this is our year. And by finishing, with the President's Trophy for their regular season excellence, the expectations in Winnipeg for that team by their fans and media just went higher and higher and higher. Add to this, and this is a good year for Canadian hockey because there's 5 NHL teams from Canada in this tournament. And that's a pretty big deal. But no team based in Canada has won the Stanley Cup for 32 years. So what I'm trying to say here is the Winnipeg Jets, a really talented, a really outstanding team. There's just a massive dose of bad historical juju, or if you want to call it bad historical karma. They've got it on their backs. They got it on their shoulder. They're feeling this intense weight. We got to get this done for our fans. We got to get this done for Winnipeg. We got to get it done for each other. We got to change this narrative that we choke in the playoffs. They got all of this put on them. And that kind of thing. And once again, I hearken back to St. Louis experiences. We saw that happen to our Blues time and time again in the postseason. So this is a real thing. When you don't handle the expectations and the burden of people saying you're the best, you should win, this is your time. When you don't handle that type of situation very well, I don't care how great a team was in the offseason, it can crumble in a hurry. And from the selfish St. Louis standpoint, I'm hoping that's the case this time. If the Blues can steal a game in Winnipeg, the psychology of this series could change in short time. If the Blues could do something really unlikely by winning the first 2 games, then we would have the famous Winnipeg whiteout becoming a Winnipeg blackout, which means the Jets moving into the grim darkness of another postseason collapse. Why am I trying to be poetic there? I don't know. It's better than me stammering around, I guess. Anyway, the Blues are going to have to be tough in defending the slot, and they're going to have to be disciplined in their coverage, and so they can prevent the rush because Winnipeg's really good at that. And though the Jets' power play really did taper off late in the regular season, they had a fantastic power play for much of the regular season. So the Blues can't let them crank that back up again. Special teams are always important. Goaltending is always important. These are hockey staples. I love the Blues young players who are talented and confident, and they seem to be getting better, game to game. We're talking about the dudes that have been here a little while, but they're still really young, like Neighbors and Bolduc. Now Jimmy Snugger, who's done nothing but impress since he's been here. Philip Broberg was considered kind of a young prospect type defenseman. But how good can he get? Well, he got a lot better for the Blues in his first season in St. Louis. Listen, now when you have young players, two things can happen. One, they can play young, really young, and things start to go bad, and then maybe they lose a little bit of their confidence, and one mistake leads to another and things like that. But the other scenario is that you have some really talented guys here who compete in a way that they are mature beyond their years. And when you have a group of young players and they've got all those great leaders, these veterans around them, and a coach like Monty, hey, these guys can just go play. They can be emboldened by this opportunity. Hey, we're in the playoffs for the first time in the NHL. Let's shine. This is our time. We can help make this happen. I'm sure that they will feel pressure to an extent, but they're going to be compared to Winnipeg and those veterans who have just gotten dumped time and time again this time of year. The Blues young kids, they're free and easy. They're not carrying any baggage into this. For the Blues, one way or another, and I'm talking mostly about the young players, but also the team in general, because this kind of melding of old and young, right? This is a great experience for them, even if they lose the series. They'll benefit from it just by being there, especially the young dudes. It's good to get some experience. I think with some of the stuff I talked about over the final 60 games of the regular season, these two teams have had exceptionally strong play at 5-on-5, and both of these teams ranked at 5-on-5 over the 60 final games. Winnipeg was number one at goal prevention of 5-on-5, but the Blues were really close to them. I'm talking about goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. The Blues were not that far back. They were fourth in the NHL at doing the same thing. So I think it's natural to expect a low-scoring, extremely tight series. However, if you're going to go by, I'm using my experience as someone who grew up in thoroughbred racing country and family member who had horses that he ran, and me being someone who paid for a year of college with my racetrack winnings at Pimlico and Laurel back in Maryland. I'm using the horse racing analogy, I guess, but when it comes to a big race, based on what both of these goaltenders have gone, right? That's what you do with horses when you're trying to pick a winner. It's like, well, which horse is at his best when it really matters? As long as he's physically sound, who's got that? Who's got that just incredible desire to get that nose in front and finish first? Because horses are wired like human athletes too, right? So if you're asking me if I had to put a bet on these two guys in goal, and again, I'm going to go back to thoroughbred racing. Binnington is the horse that I would bet on. Doesn't mean that he's going to be better than Hellebuyck, but the point is he's been better than him when it has counted, when they have gone head to head. So yeah, my $5 would go on Jordan Binnington. And if he can play better in those first two games up in Winnipeg, if he can outplay Hellebuyck again, oh my goodness, the panic attacks are going to they're going to be set off up north and in the Winnipeg locker room, and the Blues are actually going to have a chance to bring back memories of 2019, meaning entering as the underdog, getting Winnipeg to crack because Winnipeg's got the pressure of having to reverse this course of embarrassing postseason failures. The Blues need to take them back into that zone. And if the Blues can win and move forward in 2025, for them to do that, for them to win this round, they're going to have to kind of push the Jets back in time and put the Jets' minds into the 2019, 2023, and 2024 state of mind all over again. Get the Jets to start thinking about past failures and thinking about, oh my goodness, it's happening again. That's what the Blues have to do. That's why these first two games are really, really important. Anyway, I will leave you alone now, and I'm really wound up. I don't even know how long this thing was, but I wanted to talk about all this. And can always set the speed to it. When I start talking like this real fast, you can listen to it that way. But anyway, I really appreciate you watching it, no matter what, and no matter how much of it. We appreciate all of you at here on behalf of SportsHubSTL.com. All my columns are on there, and you'll find my videos on there too, and so much great stuff from everybody on the staff. So you all have a great weekend. Happy Easter to those of you who celebrate Easter, and I can't wait to watch the Blues on Saturday. And with that, I'll finally shut up and say goodbye and wish you well. Take care.